Hey, catechists and volunteers, our next session is on the church as the kingdom of God. And it's a pretty wide ranging approach to the church if you were to actually look at, and I don't expect you to do this, if you were to look at every grade's lesson plans. The objectives that we have from the diocese cover a lot of different things. So we're doing a few things that are a little bit complicated for the little ones, maybe, right? Church is in a physical sense, is the building in which we worship. And so some of our objectives deal with that, the physicality of the building itself. But we also know that the church isn't just a building, it's the people who gather there. And that's where it gets a little bit more abstract for the little ones. They're not going to focus as much on that. So in third grade especially, we're going to deal a little bit with the hierarchy of the church. Fourth and fifth grade more on actually being the church by living out the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. And then the middle school grades, we're kind of hitting all of that at different ways. And so what are we giving you guys to resource you for this lesson? Well, first of all, the thing that all of our kiddos are taking home is going to be a little Vatican flag. And this will tie in nicely because the scripture passage we're suggesting that you pray over at the beginning of class is Peter's confession of Jesus at Caesarea Philippi, and where Jesus hands him the keys of the kingdom of heaven and earth, right? Which is an ancient biblical image of authority, right? Kind of like if I give you the keys to my office or the church or whatever, you now have the authority to let anyone in and out that you want. You can drive my car however you want. You can wreck it, right, if you want. So keys represent authority. Even today, we still talk about giving someone the key to the city as this symbolic, you've done something important in the city kind of thing. That's when Jesus is giving Peter the keys of the kingdom, every last one of his apostles immediately thought of Isaiah 22 when Shebna, the king's prime minister, was deposed and Eleazar was put in his place. All right, because it uses the exact same language. I'm going to give you the keys of the kingdom. What you bind on earth, or what you bind will be bound, what you loose will be loosed, right? It's this authority thing. And so when Jesus did this to Peter, all of the apostles would have recognized in an instant, this means he's in charge when Jesus isn't here, right? And so that's the beginning of the papacy. And so this flag, which is the flag of the Vatican, recalls that, and it's got all kinds of cool symbolism in it. And so as you've probably seen in your lesson plans, we'll just kind of give you a script of like how do you explain all these different things in this flag. You'll get to ask the kids, what do you notice about this and all that kind of stuff, right? So a little bit of a history lesson, a little bit of a civics lesson on Vatican City State, but it ties in nicely with Jesus. Actually, he wasn't just founding a building in Elwood City or Zelienople or Cranberry Township. He wasn't just founding a global institution. He was founding a visible society that is the anticipation, if you will, of heaven on earth. And so that's what this flag represents, right? And that's what happens at Caesarea Philippi, or a large part of that. So that's the take-home item. All of you have this Vatican flag script, so you can kind of explain that to your kiddos. In first grade, we've got you working with a thing called Catholic Words Memory Match. There's also a fun little app where you could download it if you want to. It's not free; you'd have to pay for it. But it's got all sorts of memory match vocabulary games on there. But it's a nice game with cards with good kid-friendly illustrations of different things that you'll find in the church, different parts of the church, lots of different things. That's just a sampling of them. So you can use it as just a straight-up memory match, right? Put it out on a table. Each classroom should have 2 sets of these things, so you can spread the cards out. You can divide a deck of cards because there are 52 in here. Divide that into two sets. You got 2 sets of cards. You could have 4 different memory match games going on. And kids can just kind of flip them over and look at them. It's helpful if you can read the word for them. You don't have to do that. If they can't read the word, it's fine. They're still getting used to seeing the things in church. You can also just use it as a classroom discussion and just draw a card out and say, hey, does anybody know what this is? Does anybody know what happens here? Has anyone seen this in our church? You can use it if you're not one of the classes that meets on a Sunday. You can use it as a church tour kind of thing. You could just give each kid a card and say, we're going to go over to the church. When we go to the church, I want you to look for this thing. If you're going to do that, be careful because some of these things, like cruets, probably aren't just going to be sitting out in the church. They're back in the sacristy waiting for someone to fill them with wine and water and set up for Mass. So if Mass isn't set up, you might not see everything in there, right? The missal might not just be sitting out on the altar. It's probably in the sacristy, all right? But physical things in the church are definitely going to be there, and so you could use this to that end. And you can get creative and think of other ways to use it, but that's the Catholic Words Memory Match. For a couple of our younger grades, or I forget which all grades, we have a Pope Francis ornament. It's not really an ornament, it's more of a paper doll kind of thing. It looks like this. It's from Catholic Icing. You'll notice it says Philadelphia 2015. It was from when Pope Francis came to Philadelphia. You don't have to use the bell thing. But the idea is you just cut this out. There's a fold. You fold that back, glue it in, and all of a sudden you have a cylinder of Pope Francis. You don't have to put the legs and the arms on it. You can. It'll still look like the Pope without them. So if you're pressed for time, or you're like, I've got kindergarten and there's no way they're going to cut all this stuff out in an hour and 15 minutes, don't worry about it. Just do that piece and everything will be fine. But you could have them do the whole thing. So that's what that looks like. In second grade, we've got a vine and branches activity, and the illustration here is the sacraments connect us to Jesus, right? Jesus said he's the vine, we are the branches. We have to stay connected to him to have life. And so to be connected to Jesus, connected to be his church, you have to be connected to Jesus. And so the vine and branches illustration is each kid gets a grape and a vine, or a leaf that says, I am the vine, you are the branches, John 15:5. They can color them, they can cut them out, they can do all that sort of stuff, but they'll kind of write in on it. What's a fruit that they can bear in the church, in the world, to be connected to Jesus, right? Be nice to my mom, clean up after myself, do my homework on time, all that kind of stuff, right? And then you're going to make a vine in your classroom and connect these to them. So the vine is just going to be green streamers, right? You'll tape up on the wall, and then they can tape these up on them, but then you'll have a nice little visual of your class trying to be the vine connected to the branches, or the branches connected to the vine. We'll get that the right way, right? So that's in second grade. In third grade, we've got the Francis ornament. We've got we're going to do the Put It in Order Apostles' Creed, which we've used twice now, perhaps, right? We used that in the faith session and also in the prayer session. We're talking about being the church, and that's kind of a charter of what does the church believe, and so it's a good time to revisit that. In third grade, at the St. Ferdinand campus, we do have this Find the Pope's Race poster. I don't know if we have this in Elwood City or not, but the idea behind this is it'll be hanging up on the wall in the third grade room. You can do it a couple ways. You can do it as a relay race. You can do it as an individual thing. You can do it as a class discussion. If it's an individual thing, pick a kid. We'll give you a series of questions here, right? Like, who is the first pope not recognized as a saint? And so a kid from each team runs up and tries to find it, or the individual kid comes up and finds it. Fun fact, it's Pope Liberius, who's pope from 352 to 366. Right? And a bunch of different questions. Who was the pope when Columbus discovered the New World? Who was the pope during the First World War? I forget what the questions are, but there's a couple. First World War might not be the question, because I don't know if they know those dates. But there are things that they should be able to look up and find on there. So you can have a class discussion around that and point to the pope. You can pick, what kid wants to come find a pope. All right, you come up and find the pope who was pope in 1492. Right, you can do that a couple of different ways, but that's what that activity looks like. And again, I'm sorry, I don't know if we have that in Elwood City. I didn't think ahead to order one just to make sure that we did. But we'll have that in third grade at St. Ferdinand. Fourth grade, we've got a couple of different activities that are kind of doing similar things. So the Christ Our Teacher activity is in your lesson plans. You've seen it. It looks like this. It's essentially a look up these Bible verses and identify the work of mercy that's being done in those Bible passages. They're all events from the Gospels. You've also got a different Works of Mercy thing, which is called a Works of Mercy project. It lists the works of mercy down one side, and on the back are the others. And then it's got 4 column headings. Someone in the Bible who performed this work of mercy, a character from literature, mythology, or film who performed this work of mercy, someone I know who performed this work of mercy, and how I can perform this work of mercy. That might be a lot to try to get across in one lesson, but the idea is you're trying to spark a discussion so kids can see, like, what does feeding the hungry actually look like? And do I know a character in a Marvel movie or Disney princess movie or whatever who did that, right? So you don't have to go through every block with every kid, but again, you could. It could be an individual thing. It could be a classroom discussion thing. Similar lines, you've also got this good versus evil activity that just lists some characters from literature, movies, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Hunger Games, some Disney movies and things like that. This one, I'm recommending you just do it as a classroom discussion and not an individual thing, because we have enough other stuff that you may not get to it. But the idea is, Luke Skywalker from the Star Wars trilogy, is he good or is he evil? And why? Because a lot of times in kids' minds, it's because there's bad music playing when he comes on scene, or he wears dark clothes, or, right, we're trying to get at, why is he bad? Because of the bad thing. Luke Skywalker's good, right? Why is Luke good? Because of the good that he does, the self-sacrifice, the training, right, all that kind of thing. Why is Lord Voldemort from Harry Potter bad? Not just because he's bald and ugly, right? Bald and ugly people aren't necessarily evil. It's what he does that makes him good or makes him bad. And what is it about what he does that is bad or good, right? So that's, again, a discussion starter around why is an action good, why is an action bad? When would works of mercy be good, when would they be bad? I can feed the poor in a self-serving way and turn that into a bad activity. It's good that the poor are still eating, right? But I'm not morally culpable for the good that I've done. I'm actually morally culpable for the evil because I wanted you all to celebrate me because I did it, right? So your intentions matter in those moments. So that's a conversation starter there. And then 5th through 8th grade, we've got similar activities for all of you guys. You've got the flag script again. The He Breathed on Them is just trying to tie in some sacred art because some of our kids are more visual and we're not so great at tying in sacred art all the time. So this is a Caravaggio picture on Easter Sunday morning when Jesus breathes on them. It's also doubting Thomas putting his finger right into Jesus' side. And you'll see there's a scripture passage there so you can read what's going on in there. And then a little discussion prompt you can ask the kids, how does God breathe in their life, in the life of the church, in the world around them, where they see the breath of God, the life of God flowing. There's also an activity for 5th through 8th grade about a house of cards, right? Using just a good old deck of cards to try to build a house of cards. You pick how long you want them to take to do this, a minute, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever you want, to try to build the tallest tower. The whole point of that is you're trying to illustrate you need a solid foundation to build something that's going to last for even 30 seconds, right? The foundation's the most important part. And that's exactly what Jesus is doing in this gospel passage that we're reading by building his church on the rock of Peter's confession, right? He's building his church on something rock solid. The foundation is important, so that's what we're trying to illustrate there. And then the last activity there is the parish bulletin for 5th through 8th grade. And if younger grades want to do it, you can grab some bulletins and do it as well. But the idea there is you're just kind of skimming through it, and you can look through it ahead of time and draw their attention to something, or skip it if you don't think this activity is helpful. Or maybe this weekend's bulletin isn't helpful to illustrate what we're trying to illustrate. But we're trying to illustrate what does the church, the institution, the localized institution, do. And specifically in those older grades, if you can look at how does our parish live out these works of mercy. So do you see any examples in the bulletin promoting ministries who feed the poor or events that are feeding the poor? Do you see ministries that are praying for the sick, praying for the suffering, instructing the ignorant, right? All these sorts of things. So kind of skimming through the bulletin so kids can get a little bit more aware of what exactly does our parish church even do. And so those are all the activities that are in the lesson plans. Again, this is also a great activity, a great lesson to go over to the physical church and take a look around. Something that's not in the lesson plans, but I'm going to attach to the email that this video will go out with, is just a My Church scavenger hunt. So if you are going over to the church and you're looking for something to do, but you don't know what to do, you can download this and have kids, or ask us to print it for you too, or print it yourself if you'd like. You can have them look for these objects, give them something to write with when they go over there so they can check them off, and then you can kind of have a conversation around those items. All right, that's a lot of fun stuff coming up this week. Thanks, as always, for all that you guys are doing, and we'll see you at the sessions.